Excellent. I think most people can hear us. We'll shortly start. This is the second webinar, and then we often look to actually sort of bring up the benefits, kind of aggregate them, and the key thing is to avoid the potential for kind of double counting. We need to know when the benefits will start, when they'll actually end. So there's a whole number of things that we have to kind of actually balance. This leads to an awful lot of uncertainty, particularly when you're undertaking them, but we're kind of saying actually how things will pan out in the future. It takes some time and resources, and there's also, there are some of the moral concerns, and should we place a value, should we monetize some of these benefits? But I think one of the really important aspects in all this is if we don't, then those benefits tend to be viewed as zero. And this is one of the key drivers really actually behind the tool. We're facing a number of challenges now and in the future, and I'm sure many of us will really be aware of the wide range of challenges that we face, whether it be in terms of flooding and the potential increased risk of flooding, impact in terms of water courses, how we kind of connect with other key requirements, say in terms of water resources, how we can cope and provide capacity for future growth across our urban areas, and all those different kind of wider benefits in terms of linking with amenity. How can we create nicer places to actually live? So we're in this world where we have all these different challenges and all these competing demands, which can make good design and great vision sometimes quite challenging. But what is possible? One of the key things is whether if it's a new development, that gives us more scope potentially to actually start off with something which will be lasting and great. When it's in retrofit, it's sometimes more of a challenge, and things may actually take time to actually evolve and for us to retrofit. But it's important that we do actually start to actually account and accrue those benefits up. Because when we look at interventions, and maybe across quite a wide catchment, depending upon the measures and the components that we actually choose to use, we can create a wide range of benefits. And our key challenge, and that's why we're all here today, is to think about actually how we can place a value on all these different kind of benefits. One key way, and in terms of how we can actually help achieve these wider benefits, is to look at using sustainable drainage. And there's four key pillars around sustainable drainage: water quantity, which is the one which we're all probably very familiar with, and then the water quality, but also amenity and biodiversity. And this is from the new SuDS manual, or the update, which is due to come out in the autumn, which provides quite a big step in new information and new approaches, or better clarity and more guidance in terms of SuDS design. But I think when we're talking about sustainable drainage, I think it's important that we recognise there's a whole range of measures, but these measures will need to be used in combination. It won't all be completely green, it won't all be completely grey, and it's how we actually get that best combination to give us the overall benefits that we're looking to create for society. And if we evaluate the benefits, we believe it unlocks quite a few things. Firstly, it can probably lead to fairer comparisons, because we're not just viewing it purely on a cost basis or purely against one maybe individual need or driver, which can only help to inform better decision making. There's now more kind of request for understanding these benefits that will support wider potential funding opportunities, and I think one of the key things that we believe this tool can do is really actually help enable conversations and give an indication to what the benefits might be for different types and approaches being adopted. So ultimately lead to more sustainable drainage across it's very wide in its widest forms, actually being implemented on the ground. Now, some tools do exist, which have maybe more of a green infrastructure focus. So we've got the Green Infrastructure Northwest Valuation Toolkit. There's the CNT guide from Centre for Neighbourhood Technology from the US. So there are some applications out there, but from a UK-based tool, a key aspect for the development of this project was to have a very heavy focus and starting point related to drainage and drainage performance, which is obviously the fundamentals around SuDS. So the overall aim of this work was to collate and evaluate methodologies to assess the benefits, develop approaches accepted by relevant stakeholders, for which we've had quite a wide project steering group, and use the available information to estimate the multiple benefits of SuDS. And it's important to note that we've had this quite a large project steering group, I think of probably around 25-30 members. We've had a number of industry testers as well, and people who have attended workshops. And so this work can't really take place without the contributions of those individuals and their company's support. And in particular, it's worth us just actually thanking the organisations who funded this project directly to actually help make this actually happen. So now kind of moving on to the tool itself. So there's some key aspects really behind the tool, and we'll just briefly touch on some of these. So firstly, the collation of evidence. So we looked at over 400 values across hundreds of papers, and this was led by Bruce Horton, our environmental economist, which looked at both the quantities and the monetized values and how they'd actually been assessed, and where and when. Because one of the important aspects when we engage with a lot of people was and particularly kind of funding organisations, was really want to have UK-based monetised values, particularly wherever possible, and also the more recent they are, the better. So that is a real key kind of steer in terms of actually developing the tool. And the tools kind of followed this impact pathway approach, so understanding the impact of an intervention and what that actually leads to eventually achieve a particular outcome. The tool itself followed a structured assessment approach. So logically walks the user through the assessment, which comes in kind of 4 key parts. It considers confidence, so how confident are you in terms of the numbers that you've actually got, the numbers that you're actually using, and the monetized values, and I'll just come back to that in a short moment. And it provides help and some direction with the tools and the guidance as much as we can to first kind of qualify and then actually quantify what the benefits are, and then choose an appropriate monetized value. What it does do then, it allows you to compare potential drainage options for a site. So you can run the tool more than once, and you can then pull those numbers and actually put them into a separate comparison tool, which just makes it a little bit easier for you to compare different options. And also within the tool, we've looked to incorporate places to provide a bit of an audit trail, people, so you can record down where your information has actually come from in evidence boxes, which you think is quite important, because these things tend to be picked up and put down, and you may not actually look at the results for 6 months or even a year. So having that kind of information to remind you, we feel is actually really worthwhile. The tool is Excel based, and it's been built to work in version 2010 and version 2013 particularly, and the reason for that was because some of the macros and there was a big step between Excel 2007 and actually 2010. So to be able to get the functionality working and looking to kind of having it work further into the future, the decision was made to use that version of Excel onwards. And you can see from some of the images on the right, it includes a number of kind of user-friendly kind of outputs and that, and we'll come back to that. So the tool itself looks at a very wide range of benefits. Those which are in the right-hand side in the table, which are ticked, they are ones which we can both which you can quantify and monetize within the tool. The ones in red are ones which you can only qualify, and the tool allows you to then actually record quite a simple approach to kind of qualifying and actually trying to put a potential impact for what that is. So those benefits aren't necessarily lost. And then we've got a couple which are in amber, and the enabling development part is actually around if you've looked at what it might actually cost to enable development or enable growth to happen. It allows you to actually incorporate that actually within the tool. And there's some future work which we've just really looked to start, which is around flexible infrastructure, and we'd hope to be able to bring that into the tool later on this year or early next year. The tool, so these benefits we've linked into 2 frameworks. We initially had a very big focus on ecosystem services, but we kind of recognised that actually different people want to kind of actually view these things under different kind of frameworks. So we've also introduced the triple bottom line kind of approach into the tool as well. And so and we've used that now just as a way to be able to report and generate some outputs that people can easily use. The tool, or BeST, has a suite of outputs. Firstly, the tools. So we've got W045A, and that's the evaluation tool. That's the main tool that's been developed as a part of this project. But you've then got this comparison tool, W045B, which allows you to just copy some of the values from the tables in the evaluation tool and paste into the comparison tool, so you can just compare different options. Supporting that, we have W045C, which is the technical guidance, and which gives you more in-depth information, both in terms of when you're initially looking to undertake an evaluation, thinking about that initial stage of kind of qualification, and then the main chunk of work is really held within Chapter 4. And Chapter 4 looks at each individual benefit and provides some guidance about where the information has come from and how you can actually apply the tool and what's in that, and also flag up issues around double counting. And double counting is particularly important, that we don't double count and overestimate benefits when we're actually adopting and using the tool. And then W045D just provides a very simple user manual. It's more about press this, click this, and it just helps you walk you through initially when you're just getting actually used to the tool. Okay, so just a few, just kind of some of the screens that you'll be kind of shown as you kind of work through the tool. So this is the kind of process flow chart that you work through. So start off with the home, you input some details around the project itself, what's the capital cost of the scheme or the option, then takes you through some screening questions. Depending upon your answers on that, you might be taken to fill in a SuDS use sheet. The reason why you might be taken to that, and it opens up automatically, is actually down to the fact that a lot of the benefits here is actually around what is the final outcome of the overall scheme. So some benefits are not just reliant on an individual component. Therefore, we made quite an important decision to recognise that some benefits you assess as a whole rather than individually. So when we come to the screening questions, you're faced with this sheet, and this allows you just to think initially about different impacts that you're actually looking at, and whether you think that's actually going to make a positive or negative impact. You can record evidence in the orange boxes on the right-hand side for why you might be choosing that. You can select the different likely impact, and then the person who's using the tool selects whether they want to open the impact sheet. And this is really important, because when you select to open that impact sheet and then press the Enable Pages button on the screening sheet, that then automatically opens up the pages that you've, or the benefits that you've selected to actually look at. Once you've actually done that, you can then start to actually go through the process of entering information for each of those benefits. Within the tool as well, though, when you've initially selected the benefits that you want to look at, and you can always go back and actually amend them, it also highlights some potential stakeholders. Now, it flags up which potential stakeholders, and it kind of hides the benefits that you're not really kind of focusing on, but it then uses this green, amber, red approach to highlight which stakeholders might actually be quite interested, or you might want to go and have a conversation with. And this isn't telling you that they've got money, they may well have, but it just enables and gives a bit of direction for different bodies and organisations who you may want to go and have a conversation with. That particular benefits might chime with some of the key things that they consider and actually focus on. So this is just there to give a bit of an aid and kind of help with that kind of thinking in terms of who should we be talking to, partnering with. We also have a very simple double counting check, which just simply shows where benefits might kind of have some overlap and where you've got to take some particular care. And Chapter 4 also really kind of in the technical guidance really kind of helps with that. So then when we come to assessing the benefits and impacts, there's a few key things that we've looked to do here to keep very consistent across each sheet. So for each benefit, you always have the opportunity to enter in values if you've already undertaken an assessment. So if you've already done that independently outside of a tool, you can use those numbers and enter them directly into the tool. And we wanted to allow that because we recognise that sometimes people actually will need to be doing separate evaluations, but this also then allows to be brought together under one roof. As part of the tool, there's some simple color coding and kind of visuals that we've actually used. So the green with the dotted line includes automatically updates, so it links to other cells. Orange cells are ones which you enter values in, whether it be pounds or the start and end date, and I'll just come on to that in a moment. Blue cells are ones where you select values which are linked within those cells. So there's two important parts just to explain here. We talked earlier around kind of confidence, and there's two elements to the confidence, of which you can select 25, 50, 75 or 100% confidence in the quantities that you've come up with, and also in the monetized values that you're actually applying. And that then actually, those values are then multiplied together along with the present value before confidence, come with a present value after confidence. And we've done that to actually account for, sometimes we're not quite certain about what's actually going to happen, and to help us actually avoid overestimating, over-egging the benefits. It actually provides a simple way, but quite a robust way to allow us to actually do that. The other key part which you just mentioned is to enter in the start and end date of the evaluation, and that's actually really important, because for the calculations that are undertaken within the tool, it actually which is all done based on present value. Knowing when it will actually start in the future is really important when we're then actually looking to understand what the present value is. So that's so you have that first part on each benefit, and then thereafter you may have a number of sections which either account for different kind of benefits that you may need to actually that you may want to take account of under that kind of category, and that is then trying to help you work through and complete a benefit evaluation. Now, one of the important things actually about all of BeST is it's looking to evaluate what the benefits are. It does ask you, as I mentioned right at the start, in terms of the project inputs for what the overall cost for the scheme would actually be, and as we're comparing benefits and present value, that would be the present value cost taken in terms of both the capital and operational costs. The tool does not estimate costs for you. There's other information out there that allows you to actually do. It does ask you to actually input that information in there. In the same way, it doesn't tell you what might be the embodied and operational carbon of different SuDS as well. So it's purely around actually what the benefits this actually brings and actually creates. Once you've undertaken your benefits, and it's just worth flagging up, there's two other important sheets within the tool, and they contain, and they are a values library. One which is a yearly values library, and these contain numbers where there's government projections, for example, for what might be the change in energy costs, what might be change in the value applied to carbon. And so those are included in the yearly values library, for which the user can enter in some of their own information. You also then have the values library itself, which contains all the information which is actually embedded within the tool, and under most benefits you can also then put in your own value if you so choose as well. So once you've actually been through all that, the tool automatically pulls all the numbers through from the benefits that you actually looked at, and it looks to actually summarize them both firstly in quite a big table and then in a summary of results, and that might be within the ecosystem services kind of framework or within a triple bottom line framework. And so just to give an example, these are the benefits split into the ecosystem services categories. But what we then have is you can also see on here you have a number of user-defined categories, and those user-defined categories are quite important because we recognise that we haven't been able to cover off all benefits at the moment. New ones may actually come along. There may be some specific benefits that you have that you want to add in and bring together under this umbrella of benefits assessment. So it allows you to enter information under the user-defined benefit sheets, and then you can link them directly to which might be the appropriate ecosystem services or triple bottom line category. These tables then automatically create some graphs which people can just pick up and use. But you can also export all the charts, and this dumps them directly into a Word doc, which just makes it then quite easy to actually pick up and put those graphs into presentations or reports as you so actually need in that. So we'll now just come on to just a couple of very brief examples, and these are really kind of looking at just a couple of the functions within the tool. So firstly, this was a retrofit case study, which or a retrofit assessment that was undertaken for Yorkshire Water, which was looking at 2 combined sewer overflows initially, and the impact that was actually having on the water course, and what might be the approaches that we could adopt to reduce the spills and improve the quality of the water. So looking at it from a kind of in a qualitative manner, we looked at 4 options. Firstly, we looked at a conventional option, which was around storing water just directly at those combined sewer overflows, holding that water, then putting it back into the combined sewer network. And so when you look at the potential benefits that was actually going to bring, that was really just focused around water quality. We then actually had a solution which we call this conventional plus, which looked at both providing the benefit of the combined sewer overflows, but also looking to reduce some of the flooding predicted in the catchment. And then we had 2 further options which looked at different SuDS, and SuDS spread across the public, across quite a wide area of the catchment, so very distributed measures, and then SuDS spread across both public and private. And so this gives you a bit of an indication to which ones actually really contributed to giving positive and negative benefits within the table. And just to give you an example of how we were able to use the tool, and we ran the tool 4 times to actually look at what the benefits were. And this is using the comparison spreadsheet just to actually demonstrate one of the graphs which are actually included in there. So this simply shows what the scheme present cost was for each option, the present value of the benefits, and then the overall net present value. And this is quite interesting in itself, because it shows just to meet the water quality driver, when you kind of monetize those benefits, actually the value is actually quite small, but the cost is kind of circa £3.5 million. If you look at the other 3 approaches, which cost a lot more, but they also give a lot more benefits, particularly around the SuDS and the SuDS in public, or the SuDS in the public and private. But what was quite interesting in this case was if you went with the very conventional approaches, so kind of using concrete tanks and large damped pipes to manage both the water quality and the flooding aspect, you see a similar comparative cost, but you don't get some of those added benefits. If we just take another case study here, this was one looking at a surface water management plan up in Glasgow, and this was looking at quite a visionary approach to how to manage surface water going forward in the future, to create both kind of green routes to manage the more smaller rainfall events, but also exceedance flow pathways to manage the larger rainfall events. And this is the distribution of the benefits that are actually shown for the approach to actually manage the flow within the city centre there. And we can see both the pre-confidence on the left and the post-confidence are actually dominated by the flooding benefits, with a small proportion of other benefits kind of actually recognised. And when we look at the overall values of the scheme, so these are all things that are automatically created within the tool, we're able to actually see what the present value benefits were before and after confidence, and also around looking at some sensitivity aspects. So the tool has a sensitivity sheet which allows you to alter the confidence value, so it's quite a simple approach to sensitivity, but you can then just see what might be a low or a high value in terms of the benefits actually coming out. So Just to wrap up before we look to take some questions, and we recognise this has been quite a whiz through the tool and why that's been developed, but we've got the guidance and the user manuals which will really support you as you look to start to actually use the tool. I think it's worth us just kind of pondering on actually applying the results and actually how we use these going forward. Firstly, I think it's quite important for us to recognise and understand that a pound does not always equal a pound. Now that might seem a little bit of a strange statement, but when we're talking about benefits, view these as giving you an indication. It gives you a feel for what might be the size and magnitude of the benefits. And of course, because we've monetized them, that provides quite a simple way for us to actually compare the scale of what those benefits are. But this does not give you something to the nearest pence. But what it really does do, it actually helps us think about, and I think this is quite an important step for us to think about what those wider benefits are and help identify them. And because we actually allow with the confidence values, it allows us to account for some of the things that we may not have the best information on, but we can still then actually recognise that those benefits would potentially exist. And if we can demonstrate the potential level of those benefits, we can look to understand who might benefit. So who will be the beneficiaries of kind of putting in the drainage schemes, which may go beyond just those traditional ones that we look at, which might be flooding and water quality, but it might be the whole host of wider benefits. So who actually benefits, which can actually help us think about who may want to put some form of contribution into the work. As I mentioned right at the start, helps us, I think, in terms of conversations that we can go and have with different stakeholders, potential different partners, and it provides some nice simple ways to actually help communicate that with the graphs. And I think the last thing what it does is it helps you understand which benefits you might want to go and get some more information on. That might be really dominant benefits, dominant ones in terms of ones which really are the key benefit that you're actually saying is actually given by your work, and where you may want to go and actually put even further effort to firm up those numbers. In the same way, it might actually flag up that actually this is quite a big benefit, but actually at the time you were quite uncertain, you'd put quite a low confidence value actually attached to this. And so you can then actually use the tool to recognise that if that still comes up as quite a significant value, one where you may be looking to seek wider support, you may actually then decide to invest a little bit more energy and effort to try and actually firm up the confidence around that, which will then actually help again when you're actually having those conversations. So as Suzanne mentioned, if you want to know more, the tool is freely available. There will shortly be some case studies also added onto the website, which includes a short summary as well as an example of an option actually run through the tool for each case study. The tool is free. It's free to download. And if you have queries regarding the tool, you can email them to best@sustrain.org, and then the team will look trying to respond to you as quick as we can. It's probably worth highlighting that that's for questions around the functionality and using the tool, and if you're not quite sure about something, it's not for us to give specific economic guidance and advice, but it is very much focused around providing support for you actually using the tool. And of course, if you have any feedback, we will be looking to update the tool, firstly with a slight probably update for early autumn, and then a further update in 2016, where we'll also be looking to see is there more benefit information out there which allows us to bring other aspects into the tool, and we feel that's quite important, because this is quite a fast changing environment now, where more benefit studies are being undertaken and being kind of discussed in kind of other projects. So we would welcome your feedback, and if you've undertaken individual studies to evaluate certain benefits and looked at monetary values, we would also welcome hearing about that. So we'll look to finish there. But if you've got any questions, please either unmute yourself, or if you wanted to drop questions through the text route by putting them into the question box, we'll be happy to take them for the next 10 or so minutes.
Chris, there's been quite a few questions have come through on the text box, so shall I run through them with you? We've got 4 questions at the moment. First question from Simon Bates, who has asked who is most likely to have total cost of the SuDS, who's going to have the total cost of a SuDS scheme? Would it be the engineer, the architect, or who?
So in terms of the total cost of a SuDS scheme, it'll probably actually initially depend upon what stage that you actually come to this at. And what I mean by that in terms of where you are in terms of the kind of design phase. So is this at a master plan phase? Is it, or are you starting to get into a little bit more detail? What I would probably expect is actually people are working together, because the development of the costs for sustainable drainage, some people are more familiar with this than others. There is some very generic information out there around costing, which you can draw on, but as we flagged up in terms of our approaches within the benefit work and transferring monetized values from one context to the other, it's really important that when you kind of pick up some of these more generic costs which are out there, you really get to grips with some of the context behind them, because it's clear from some of the values that they're for very, very specific contexts. I think the best way to actually come up with overall costs is by starting to have this multidisciplinary team working together, because I think that will give us more certainty, rather than it just being a one type of discipline on its own.
Okay, and then we've got another question from Abby Christosimo. How frequently will the tool be updated with new benefits, updated research, updated costs, etc.?
So yeah, in terms of our approach for, as I think just mentioned right at the end there, we are looking to do a minor update around late September, early October, to coincide with the anticipated launch of the updated SuDS manual, and that really will probably just look to take on board anyone's feedback, anyone's comments, any little bugs that might have actually appeared. But then we'll be looking to do a little more of a substantial update if there's more information available, and also trying to consider this flexible infrastructure question, because we're quite aware there's a growing body of evidence that sustainable drainage can provide a more flexible infrastructure that's more adaptable in the future, but it's providing what I believe is a kind of robust way to enable to capture it. That's going to be happening more like kind of early in 2016, with a release probably a little bit after Easter, kind of April, May time in 2016. But what I would say is, if anyone does come across research that appears quite new, we would love to actually hear from you. So even if it's just actually providing a reference through best@susdrain.org, we would welcome that, because we believe we're actually working, as a very team here to create something for everyone within the industry.
Okay, there are a few hands up, and I'm just wondering if those hands up are there for specific questions. If you've got your hands up and you don't want to ask a question, can you take them down now, please? And I'll just ask one of the other type questions in the meantime. From Teresa Brown, she's asking, can this be applied to rural SuDS, i.e. agriculture for agricultural land runoff?
Well, that's a really good question. I think there are some aspects of the tool which could be applicable to the rural side, but I would probably suggest that with a number of the benefits in terms of what they are looking at, they're more focused around the urban development areas. So I think there's probably one or two which you could use, and you could certainly use the tool in terms of its kind of umbrella approach to capture some of those benefits. But the real big focus behind the tool has been looking at the urban area.
Okay.
Just to add, Chris, sorry, it's Bruce. I mean, because it's outcome focused, I think if you're likely to get significant benefits in terms of things like water quality and biodiversity, then it would be worth applying it in a rural context. If it's mainly, if you're not going to get significant benefits in those kind of areas of water quality, biodiversity, then you're less likely to get significant benefits coming out of the tool.
And I think that screening questions that we actually have would initially help you, Teresa, just to kind of actually think about that and very quickly tick off the benefits that would not actually really then actually come into the realm of what BeST is.
Okay. I'm going to unmute someone and see if we can take a question then from one of the raised hands. We've got Orlando Van. Orlando, you're now unmuted if you want to ask a question. Hello, Orlando. Oh, the hand's come down. No, okay. We'll try Martin Harvey. Hello, Martin, can you hear us? No, Martin's not answering. I'll just scroll down and see if there's anyone else who's still got their hand outstanding. Anthony Gay. Hello, Anthony. Hello, Anthony. No. You've been unmuted if you want to ask your question. No. Okay, well what I'll do then is I'll read one of the other questions that have come through. We've got Nicole Shamier who's asked, do you have a recommended source for SuDS costs as well?
The tool doesn't include where there's recommended costs for SuDS. I can't remember if on SuStrain that you have any sources for recommended costs. So that's maybe a question back to Paul or Suzanne at CIRIA. There is a lot of information which is actually on the web, but as I kind of actually flagged up, when you look to use some of those numbers around the costs, really do consider the context about where those numbers have actually come from. For example, if someone's talking about a swale, are they talking about a swale which was on new development land, and was it just grass, or is it a bioinfiltration swale which is also in a retrofit setting, which the cost might vary significantly. So I just flag that kind of note of caution when you are picking up some of those generic costs.
Yeah, Chris, there is some information on SuStrain. I think if you go to the resources section within there and look at the evidence page, there's information on cost, but I'd really echo what Chris just said, really, in terms of the fact that cost is so going to be so case specific and site specific that I wouldn't necessarily go looking at unit costs or some of the other costs for an application, but there are some information there on the costs of SuDS. There's also information out there in Cambridge's SuDS guidance as well, but I think it really needs to be done on a case-by-case basis.
That was Paul Schaffer, by the way. Shall I read another question out then? We've got a question from Anthony Cabria. What would be the usual discount rate accepted by the industry when computing present values?
Well, I think I'll start with, I believe the Green Book is 3.5%, or that's the recommended value for the discount rate, but some different organisations do have some different rates. So Bruce, did you want to comment particularly on this aspect?
Well, yeah, as you say, the default in the tool is 3.5%, and it's based on government guidance in the Green Book, and it declines over time. So the further out into the future you go, the lower the discount rate. But you can amend that. That's one of the things you can change in the tool. So if you're a water company, for example, who wants to use the cost of capital, you can change the override that 3.5%.
Yeah. And then there's another question from Boone Nig, who's said, ultimately, who will be the owner and responsible for its maintenance?
Now, I'm going to take your question here, Boone, to be about the SuDS tool rather than SuDS itself. The SuDS, so BeST, the ultimate responsibility comes down to obviously CIRIA, but we're working with CIRIA currently through to mid-2016 in terms of looking to do maintenance and update on that, and then as we look to the future, we'll then be looking to, in terms of how that might actually transition into anything else. But kind of decisions beyond 2016 haven't actually been made yet. But I'm sure if there's a good uptake in its use, we'll actually, and I'm saying we as CIRIA now, will be able to kind of look to gain further industry support to actually keep it maintained and updated and very valid for people wanting to use it year on year.
I think, and then the next question from Alan Bamforth carries on from that. How often is BeST updated on with its costs?
Okay, well, so as I said, in terms of update, that's very much, and it's just worth kind of reiterating, it's around the benefits rather than costs. If you were referring to SuDS costs per se. But we'll be looking to, as I said, update at autumn and next year, and I think prices are currently in 2013 prices, so we will be probably looking to as part of the update prior to its launch, using kind of 2014 prices in autumn as well.
There's another question from Simon Bates asking briefly, how is biodiversity?
So I'll tell you this, Chris. So briefly, it's one of the more difficult categories because there's relatively few studies that have sought to monetize biodiversity benefits that are applicable to SuDS. So we've got a few studies in there. It depends on, first you need to quantify the biodiversity benefit in terms of the land area that's improved and the scale and type of improvement. So and then monetary values are applied to those quantities. So essentially, the greater the land area that's improved, the greater the benefit, and the better the improvement, the greater the benefit as well. So generally, SuDS that include permanent areas of water tend to get higher biodiversity benefits. If it's just kind of grassland or dry areas, mostly dry areas, then you tend to get lower benefits. So there's quite a bit of uncertainty around that, but you can get, if you're doing wet areas over a significant scale, then you can get significant biodiversity benefits from the tool.
Great. And then we've got one more question that's been typed up, and that sort of brings us quite closely to, well, it brings us to the end of the time slot that we've got, from Erato Panayotou, and he's asked, what information is required to be inserted in the project inputs, input data section? Summarise the baseline option.
Okay, so with the input data, the input data is firstly looking for you to record down information about your scheme as a bit of a record. So it's actually there, and if you come back to answer later, it's quite clear what you're actually doing. So it asks for information around costs, but what it also asks you to summarise what your kind of baseline and what your proposed is. And this will kind of slightly vary depending upon the context in which you're actually in which you're actually faced with. The typical scenario, and this is fully explained in I think it's chapter 1 in the guidance. But typically your baseline, so if that's in a retrofit situation, your baseline would probably always be your starting point. What is it today? And so you then would be comparing your proposed option against actually what change will you actually see. And so what we ask for people to put in the project inputs is a very short summary of what their baseline is, which might just be current situation, and what the proposed is, which might be SuDS in public spaces. So we use that section in the project inputs to capture what the baseline and the proposed is, but there are some subtle kind of little differences that you might be wanting to compare with, and the guidance goes on to actually explain that a lot more fully. So I'd really recommend going into I think that's in chapter 1, and you can see for some different contexts how you might select the baseline and a proposed.
Okay, I've got one hand up still. I'm going to try, it's Anthony Gay. Anthony, you have to unmute yourself if you want to ask a question. So I'll give you another opportunity if you want to. If you've got a question, can you try and unmute yourself and we'll see if we can answer. Hello, Anthony. You are coming up as being self-muted, and I have unmuted. Ooh.
I didn't have a question, sorry, I thought I had my hand down.
Oh, okay, so we've got through to you, but you don't have a question any longer.
No, sorry.
No, that's all right, don't worry.
Thanks, Anthony.
No problem, Anthony. Well, that's all the questions that have come through then, Chris. I'll hand over to you again for...
Lovely. Well, thank you all for your coming along today to the web. Appreciate that. We hope you can make good use of the tool. As I said, it's free to download. There's the opportunity for you to provide feedback and questions, which we'll look to answer as soon as we can when that comes in. And there will be, as I said, a future update coming along in autumn, which will coincide with a joint launch with the SuDS manual, probably around October time. So thank you very much. Enjoy assessing benefits, and we'll hopefully be in touch soon with a slightly updated version in September, October.
Okay, thanks everybody. Great to see such a good turnout so early in the morning. We'll keep you updated. Just keep checking into the Sustain website. Bye.
Lovely. Thank you all.